Welcome, welcome everyone. We're so glad to be together again. This is Lucky Sweeney and my pal.
Hello everybody, this is Mary Shea.
We're glad to be back with you. And so we thought we'd do just a little bit of a review of where we've been and where we're going. We started out with Sacred Heart Contract in the first week. And today we're going to talk about the co-creative partnership. And then next week talk about co-creative partnership and manifestation, how all those things come together. And we chose to start with the Sacred Heart Contract because that's the part that you have to put the most energy into. Because composing a Sacred Heart Contract is based on your desire alone. Composing a contract or making a request can lead to attracting and manifesting what you want in your life, spiritual growth, establishing a co-creative partnership, and opening your heart more fully. We started here because this is a part that's going to take the most in terms of your own input. This is yours. The Sacred Heart Contract comes from you and is about you and is about your willingness for asking for what you really want to do and then creating a request that's most powerful and really symbolizes it. So the other thing we talked about in the first week was the Sacred Heart Contract, a 6-step process. Discovering what you want, translating what you want, your desire, into words, images, and symbols, composing your contract, writing it up, or making whatever. If you remember, we talked about it could be a painting or there was a labyrinth garden in one of the presentations, all different kinds. Pictures, images, as well as it can be a written something. Activating your contract or request, so you're empowering that contract, and then remaining open to receiving and manifesting. 6, communicating and working with your co-creative partner. So that was week 1. It was all about what we need to put into this process and what's important for us to do to activate from ourselves what it is that we really want.
Today, we're going to talk about the co-creative partner, which I consider a very important part of the Sacred Heart Contract. And this is why. True co-creative manifestation is not an alakazam magic process. Though things can appear without any input or effort from you, other than a request or an affirmation, your odds increase when you are involved in the process because you will have more options, your success rate will rise, spiritual growth becomes possible, and you also acquire a lifelong skill. So co-creative manifestation is a very rich process, and the path includes multidimensional interaction. In other words, interaction with a co-creative partner. So this is a major course of study. And while you're focused on the goal, you become aware of the process. And awareness of the process leads to spiritual growth. I've been reading a book by Carl Jung, and he practiced multidimensional awareness for decades. And this is how he came up with the insight for the development of Jungian psychology. So when you have a goal, and even if the goal is manifestation, this keeps you on task and aware. We're also going to talk about flow, which is manifestation weather. That's the way I term it. And we'll begin to discuss the elements necessary for co-creative manifestation. 3 out of 4 will be presented. To understand flow, you have to connect with your co-creative partner and begin two-way communication. And we will discuss how the senses are involved with communication.
So let's look at the overview of the evening. What we're going to look at tonight is what is co-creation. We'll give you a definition. What is a co-creative partner? Who is your personal co-creative partner? What are your expectations of your co-creative partner? Why is it a good thing to have a co-creative partner? How do you connect with your co-creative partner? What senses are awakened to subtleties during communication? And in what ways do you perceive those communications?
So what is co-creation? Co-creation is the process of accessing an energy, force, higher intelligence, or being for the purpose of collaboration and guidance in regards to attracting and manifesting what you want. You are basically asking for assistance. People do this many times in many ways. I mean, look at the 12-step program. God is called upon to help with a problem. In this case, you are asking for assistance in creating something you want to do, to be, to have, or experience. Because the force is beyond your intellect, the journey leads to an evolution in consciousness and spiritual growth. So this is a side product. This is an extra benefit that comes with the process of co-creation.
So what is a co-creative partner? This is a creative force on a higher plane. It will come from what you see as your co-creative force. It could be God, it could be spirit, it could be universe, it could be goddess, it could be nature, whatever works for you. It has the ability far beyond me to understand, create, and know what is in my best interest. That is, it's a higher power, someone that's got a bigger view, someone, an essence. Does not have to have any kind of semblance to any form that is human or anything, but it's looking for your best interest. Assist me in the process of attraction, manifestation, and spiritual growth, and is a good friend, a guide, a helper, a teacher, and implementer. So this co-creative partner is a very personal relationship. And when I was reading this, and thinking about sharing this, it made me think about when I was a little girl. I prayed a fair amount. And, at that point there was a very standard image of what God was. But I can remember actually having a very personal, individual sense. So if you are at all kind of trying to figure out what your co-creator looks like, what form is it, what essence is it, think about sometimes when you felt really, really connected to a higher power, to the divine in some way, and that will probably be a very big clue for you.
Lucky and I are going to talk about some of our personal experiences. So who is your personal co-creative partner? For me, I think of it as God. It's just a catch-all word that I use that works for me, and it contains all the other words, beings, forces that one might think of. I have dealt with intermediaries in the past, such as saints or spirit guides, lost loved ones, family members I may call on who've passed over. Now I just think of the co-creative partner as God or some aspect of God. It's just an easy term for me to use, but it's not limited to any traditional interpretation of what God is or goddess.
And for me, God, divine, source, any of those terms might describe where I will find my co-creative partnership. I also, if I'm doing a particular prayer or contract for something in particular, I may call upon some aspect of source that's identified with the task at hand. So for instance, if it was an abundance task, if I was looking to create some kind of abundance, I might call upon the Hindu goddess of abundance, Lakshmi, or the planet Jupiter as symbols of that. But for me, all of those gods and goddesses and different manifestations are just differentiation of the one, like facets on a gem. So for me, there's no separateness in the oneness. It's calling upon some aspect of the oneness that might have to do with it. For instance, if I were doing a healing thing, I might very well call on the Archangel Raphael. for healing, for he's associated with healing. Whatever works, and to me it's all the oneness.
So who is your co-creative partner? Your personal co-creative partner is that being, energy, dynamic force, or part of yourself that is of a higher intelligence or nature and can assist you in the process of attraction and manifestation. On the right-hand side of the slide, we've listed some examples, but you are not limited to these words. God, Goddess, universe, spirit, source, angels, spirit guide, energy, higher self or soul. Whatever or whoever you are most comfortable with, you can use that image, that phrase, that word, terminology, whatever fits you, you can use.
Yeah, and my encouragement in this would be to at least spend some time not figuring this out, but allowing it to emerge for you. You know, you might take a little quiet time and just see what the feeling is or what images come to mind versus trying to plot it out or figure it out with your mind, although that might be your way too. So I'm not limiting it in any way, but just letting it be. Some very kinesthetic people, some people have very strong feeling. It's just a sense they know when they're in that presence.
What are your expectations? And this is something you need to think about in regards to your co-creative partner. Because some of us have been trained with the concept that God is vengeful or a tough taskmaker. You know, there are some negative connotations that we might have in regards to our co-creative partner. And so it's important to look at what are your expectations about your co-creative partner. My expectation is that the co-creative partner will be with me, will walk with me through whatever is occurring and whatever is in my best interest spiritually. In that sense, I don't always have specific expectations regarding the outcome of my request. Certainly I would like this or that or financial stability, and I do make requests, but I trust that everything that happens for a reason or a purpose, and I accept that. So there's a piece that is within me at this point after years of working with my co-creative partner. And I realized that this stage of this peace, this acceptance or even surrender, is a stage of development and may not be comfortable for others or may not even be suitable for where you are in your spiritual journey. It just happens to be where I am. On the other hand, let my computer break down, which it did last night. It wouldn't boot up, and I am having a fit. So it was tough last night, folks. So the big things I can handle with grace, but technology sometimes takes me around the bend. So
Yes, yeah, I think that's true for a lot of us. I want this partnership to be an aspect of my spiritual path. That's the most important thing for me, and to have it somehow be integrated. It's not separate than my spiritual path. This is just my current activity on that path. I can get angry or disappointed in my co-creative partner. I learned at a certain point that if I was going to get really angry at somebody, God was probably the best person to do that. You know? I know that sounds contradictory, but I figured out, well, God could take it. It was not going to be a problem, and that it was just a feeling I was having. But it seems like, as Mary was saying, we don't always get what we want right away. We often get it eventually, but we may not get it in the timing that we want. It's always for the best, but there can be some disappointment and some sense of frustration around that. I also understand that this is a co-creative partnership, and maybe my partner knows something I don't. And what am I doing? What's my part in this partnership? And the subtlety of that being, am I really allowing myself to receive all the information that's available to me? Am I keeping myself in an open date, or am I so attached to how things should look that I'm not being in full cooperation in this partnership? You know, I'm blocking it off with my own sense of holding on to something that might not be the best thing for me.
So why is a co-creative partner a good thing? A co-creative partner creates insight. It also creates ease in my life. And this is one of the things that is so important, is this ease, that there isn't this frustration, that things just kind of smooth out, and I'm aware of where the ease is and travel in that direction. And we're going to talk more about ease next week. It is a very clear communication signal when doors fly open. I also sense comfort and ongoing support from my co-creative partner. And manifestation through attraction and receptivity, to me, is an ongoing mystery. It fascinates me. And even after decades of working with this, I still don't know how things are going to work out or how things will occur, how events will unfold. It's still a surprise to me. It's still a mystery, and I love it. So there are so many possibilities and options for even one scenario that it's difficult to know exactly what to do or where to go on your own. I just can't think it out. All the processes, all the moves, it's like a complicated chess game. And I don't have to. I can ask for help at any time. So I need help to proceed, and at this point, I know to stay in touch, because that's what creates the ease, creates the flow that I can move with.
So for me, the partnership is a confirmation that I am truly connected to God, to Source. And I want to say at this point that, boy, this was not an overnight process for me. Quite a experimenting process, learning to trust this energy of this higher force, learning to really listen, learning to receive information, and then taking the action that I felt was shown. I just want to mention that. We know that this is not something that happens overnight, but is a process well worth developing. So there are times in our process of co-creation when each of us will actually experience energetically, through a synchronicity, a turn of events, a sensing within us, and there's something more than me here. What this can look like will be really different. For me, it is often about, there are lots of different ones, but one of the ones that happens fairly consistently for me is numbers, and particularly 7-11, because I got my name because I weighed 7 pounds and 11 ounces, and those are lucky numbers when I was born. So 7-11's always been a special thing, and it's something that will show up in some of my roughest moments and some of my happiest moments, either on a clock or on a license plate, or it's amazing. I'm always blown away, and I know that it's the universe winking at me. It makes me laugh. Sometimes it makes me cry because I'm really feeling desperate and having a hard time, and I just feel like they're angels patting me on the shoulder when I see that. So you'll have those too. I definitely, again, had some real resistance to it, so it took me a while to really just surrender to allow that to happen. But now it does happen in some amazing ways. This really is more powerful than any particular manifestation. Although it's nice to actually manifest something and go, yes, yes, you know, there's a great sense of success and happiness in that. But it's also our willingness to just participate in the process that really brings us closer to God, to your higher power, however you understand that.
Why is a co-creative partner a good thing? A co-creative partner can help you understand flow, or as I call it, manifestation weather. There is a time for everything, a time to move ahead, a time to wait, a time when the energy field opens up and manifestation occurs with ease. And you need to be in the flow to attract and receive. These are like a spiritual bleed-through from a different dimension where just the energy changes, and you can feel the energy change. So when you're in the flow, this is a time of ease. And when I'm going with the flow, things just happen. When it's a time of frustration and setbacks, I know I'm going against the flow. You know, I want what I want when I want it, despite the obstacles or signs of delay. You need to be in the flow, and the flow can feel like a time of change. There can be a sense of movement, a sense of shifting gears or breakdowns. Electrical and technological breakdowns are warning signs for me, and they're signs of change. The change is coming, and we all have little indicators of change, and we need to be aware of those. Also, when the flow is running, it can be a high energy time. I mentioned like transition in labor, and you need to work to stay calm during that time and balanced. Sometimes it's simple when you're in the flow, and sometimes it can make you anxious. It can be anxiety producing. I had a client that wanted to sell a second home, and the offer was a good one. The buyer agreed to all of the seller requirements. But one day the seller called me up in high anxiety and said she was going to pull out of the deal. It had just become too overwhelming for her, this major transition, and the tension had gotten very high. I was able to talk her down, explaining that this was the manifestation process that was occurring, and she held on. The deal was completed without any problems. I think the storyline with this is that sometimes the flow can seem overwhelming. Attracting can be an easy part, but when things start to happen, there can be times when it's moving so quickly that there is a high energy, sense of emotion going on at that time. And just know that that can be the flow. You can be in the transition. We were going to talk about the elements necessary for manifestation. And this kind of pulls the whole lecture series together. That first, you need a desire. This is what you want. And this is the fuel for the attraction and the manifestation process. And we talked about this the first week. And from that, you draw up, you compose a focused and sustained thought. And this is your contract, your sacred contract that funnels the creative energy into form. Then the third element is flow. And this is that interdimensional, multidimensional, co-creative partner process with manifestation weather that you know all systems are go. The information comes to you from your co-creative partner. This creates this dynamic. So these are the first three elements that are related to manifestation.
I just want to add here something that I was told, and now I share with many of my clients, which is if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you. And that this idea of knowing what your desire is and being able to articulate your desire gives the universe, God, a whole direction in which to move. So that's the importance of desire in terms of this whole process.
How do you connect with your partner? So we've talked about who is your co-creative partner, what your co-creative partner can do for you, what your expectations are, but you also have to think about how you connect to your co-creative partner. For me, meditation is my main tool around sensitization to subtleties and listening, but I'm also open to receiving information and insight at any time. Whether I'm preparing dinner or driving my car, it doesn't make any difference whenever it comes. I'm also trained in Native American traditions regarding the observation of nature and the practice of awareness of what is happening around me or what is appearing around me. It's interesting that my sister mentioned to me one day that she was driving in the woods and a hawk came directly at her, came right down the road and almost hit the windshield. And this was very uncommon. She'd never experienced anything like this with the hawk coming so close. And when you have something like that happen, it's a significant sighting and it has meaning. And so I asked her, what were you thinking about when this happened? And that's the first thing that comes to my mind when I see a sign is, what am I thinking about? I stop. What am I thinking? And she was unable to recall it, but it can be very meaningful. I was at a rehab facility yesterday, and I witnessed a situation that I thought was not handled gently with their resident who has dementia. And I was very concerned about it. And when I left the facility, there were deer on the lawn. And deer always indicate to me gentleness is very important in this situation. So be aware of what goes on around you.
Some of the ways that I connect with my partner is that through meditation. I'm a long-time meditator. And automatic writing, which I kind of discovered many decades ago, actually. I would come out of my meditation and I would notice that after a certain amount of time, I wasn't totally conscious about what it was that I was writing. It wasn't that I wasn't there and wasn't present, but I was just allowing whatever I was hearing in my mind to come out through my hands, or just letting my hands write. So that's always been an interesting thing and continues to this day. And maybe also for those of you who, like me, I'm a pretty mental person at one level. I think a lot, love ideas and conversation, that kind of thing. And it's really good for me when I'm able to get that thinking mind out of the way for a while. And automatic writing does that. And you can do it just by putting your pen to paper and let it move, or maybe hearing something that inspires you. I've also used various decks, card decks from tarot, was probably where I started, to all kinds of angel cards, and I'm sure you all know of lots of things. Sometimes I've used books, open a book to a certain place, or use the I Ching, and other kinds of oracles as I found them handy. I have a whole bookshelf full of these kinds of things that I use when it feels right to do that. And sometimes information comes to me without any assistance. I also use what I see in my life. What's going on? How out of sync are things? How disordered is it? Am I having a hard time finding things that I want? That kind of stuff. And then since I live by the ocean and I've spent a lot of time all my life by the ocean, it's a very special place for me and actually puts me into a fairly altered state pretty quickly. So that sense of walking by the ocean, and you may have this in nature at anywhere, at any place, or just kind of opens you up to another level of consciousness, feel a little bit altered in your consciousness, and just allowing myself to be in that state and kind of see what I see. Sometimes I see just light comes in really spectacular ways, or I catch something on the water that seems particularly inspiring. And I can just allow my mind to kind of open up and be free to experience whatever is coming through at the time.
What senses are awakened to subtleties? The process of attracting and manifesting began with asking, determining your heart's desire, then translating that desire into a focused, sustained thought, and then writing a contract that you initiated. And then the next step is that you establish two-way communication with your co-creative partner. And this can occur through seeing, hearing, and sensing.
Visual experiences, they can come in a lot of ways. So it can be with eyes open. You can have a vision. This is something that might happen at the beach for me. I was talking about walking in that altered state. Some vision occurring kind of in midair, and it may just be a slight little glitter or a glimmer, where you may see something very defined, or out of the corner of your eye. You can see something out of the corner of your eye, and that's with your eyes open. With your eyes closed, appearing on the inside of your eyelids or appearing in the middle of your brain. A dream-like knowing, or in a twilight sleep, just as you're falling asleep or just as you're waking up, having that in-between state, that twilight state. And then, of course, in dreams, literally being asleep. For some of you, this is going to be a very potent thing. For those of you who dream a lot, you may want to really use that. And a good way to do it, just a little tip, is have a pencil and paper by your bed and write down just whatever you know right away when you wake up, because it's certainly a very strong way that we all receive messages is through our dreams.
So Lucky and I are going to share some of our experiences. This is so you can be sensitized to all the different ways that communication with a co-creative partner can occur, but also just to hear what our experiences are makes it okay for you to accept your experiences. There may be a time when you discount things or you explain things away, but hearing what our experiences are may open your eyes to what the communication really is. So I have seen visions with eyes open in midair, though this is very rare for me. And I even have one experience totally full-formed before me that I have never understood. The fact that it's a more dramatic vision doesn't necessarily mean that it's more significant. In my case, I think they were testing the apparatus. I've had some visions with the eyes closed or in a semi-awake sleep state, but they are also not common. And I actually had to learn to stay relaxed. When you see something out of the corner of your eye or a vision arises, if you turn your eyes quickly to catch it, then the vision fades. It disappears very quickly. And so I had to learn to not get excited, to just relax, to just be with it, whatever I was experiencing, whether it was out of the corner of my eye or it was on the insides of my eyelids. I rarely dream. I really don't dream much at all. But when I do, the dreams are highly significant. I have had situations where I become fully conscious while the body is asleep. I know my body's asleep, but I know I'm awake, which is different from a vivid dream. And I have had the rare out-of-body experience. But I'd have to say, visually, visions are not my primary form of communication.
I was introduced to creative visualization from a number of directions, probably the late 70s through Shakti Gawain's wonderful book, Creative Visualization. And a lot of things I was doing, a lot of workshops and things I was going to were using visualization. And I could think the pictures, but I really couldn't see them. And I really thought, oh, I'll never be able to do this visualization thing. It's not really mine. But after about a year really being exposed to it and feeling frustrated and thinking, why can everybody else do this, I decided that this was like any other skill and I could learn it. And I did learn to do it. I learned how to be able to visualize things with my consciousness, which is kind of a different way than just coming to you, but they both talk about co-creation. This is a co-creative act, visualizing. And so I learned to see pictures in my mind, and I share that just because if you're one of those people who thinks, oh, I can't see, I don't ever see anything, you can train yourself over time to be able to see visualizations. And now I'm pretty skilled at that ability at this stage in the game.
I think that's a really important point that you bring up, Lucky, is that this is a skill that you put your attention on. The skill that I had to learn to not jump at something, to not get excited, to just stay calm if something was arising. So there's a training. There's a certain amount of training. Lucky's training and my training were different, but certainly we both needed to train. You also can have auditory experiences. You may actually hear a sound out loud through your ears. It can be very short. You'll think, did I really hear that? But there's an actual out loud sound that you can hear. You can also hear whispers. In other words, a very faint sound that's in the ear. It's more like a whisper type of thing. And then there is the thought voice, which is one of the primary ways that I communicate with my co-creative partner. The way I describe it is part of you goes, who thought that? Because the thought is so out of left field, you don't think you thought it. You think that it came from some other place. The experience is, that wasn't me. Who was that thought that? Only once or twice have I heard a voice out loud, and it was not a whisper. I blew open spontaneously in 1970, and it was very overwhelming. Lucky talked about having a profound experience and being overwhelmed also. And I actually shut everything down in 1978. So you do have some control over this. I opened again in 87 after I agreed to open. It was under the condition that I was on a need-to-know basis. I did not want to be overwhelmed with experience I could not do anything about or did not involve family or friends. So I set a condition on knowing. Being in the bank parking lot and seeing bloody kids get on a motorcycle was just not something that I thought was in my best interest. I thought if I needed to know, there was a reason, like in doing a reading, and otherwise I didn't need to know. Hearing is very subtle at this point. It's mostly the thought voice that breaks in, and it's not my thought. I recognize that it's somebody else's thought that's being interjected. I also see sharp sounds when my eyes are closed, so there's some type of connection between visual and sound. And my preference certainly is wisdom over prediction, and always has been. With Lucky and I sharing, it's important to note that 40 years ago, what we are describing, these voices and also these visions, were considered hallucinations. I was even in counseling at about that time. They were definitely called hallucinations. This is the way psychology looked at them. There was nothing about spiritual insight, and there was nothing about a religious experience. This is what they were called. What we're trying to do here is demystify this and also say that it's okay. It's okay to have these type of experiences.
You know, if this is new to you, it's okay. For me, it was over years of really getting used to trusting that this wasn't just some thought I was having, being able to see it as something that was coming to me. Felt uncomfortable, and all of those things are quite normal and quite human. You know, hang in there with it, you know, bless it or say whatever it is, but it's okay to have periods of doubt and maybe not understanding, and just keep on moving back. You know where your center is, you know, your own personal center, whatever that might be. That's the best place to move back to when you kind of feel like, I'm not sure what's going on here, in my experience anyway. In some of the ways that I hear, I think I heard voices as a child. I don't have the clearest of memories, but I have a really strong sense of it. The first time I heard a specific message in my head was at a very profound, life-changing moment of my life, and I heard a very specific message that was very important and had a huge impact on my whole life. That's a particular experience. That's not usually what's going on that big, although it does happen. At that time when that happened, I was having a lot of different experiences, and it was a time of a great spiritual awakening. And I didn't really know what was happening to me. And so that message was a little scary for me, and I actually was not comfortable with it. Thought maybe I was a little crazy or something, but now when I look back, it was like so clear. It was just really saying, okay, here you are, this is what's happening, and in truth, very helpful. Since then, I hear messages all the time. I request them. Sometimes I say no to them, like, no, I'm not doing that. And sometimes I act on the messages, and probably more than not, I act on the messages. They give me guidance and direction, and I'm still in charge. I know that it's my responsibility, and I think if it's something that I say no to, it's because I either am just not able to do it. At that moment, I don't have the strength to do that, or the courage, whatever it is. And I know that my co-creative partner is looking out for me for my best. They're not going to punish me or say I was bad for saying no to something that I was hearing. They know that I'm doing the best. And sometimes I'll say, can you put that in another way? Can we think of another way to do that? I can't do that. Very interactive for me at this point. And it can be as simple as, where's that spoon that I'm looking for, that I want to cook something with? I will go there with it and just say, okay, show me where it is, and wait, and in a few minutes I'll probably run into it where I've put it down.
Censoring and knowing. Sensory can come through a sensation that's hot, cold, wind, movement. There can be a physical sensation that is occurring. There also can be electrical or energetic sensations, a feeling of energy or current running through your body, a feeling of heaviness, of being really grounded, or on the other hand, a feeling of lightness, of feeling uplifted. There can be sensations around bliss is also a possibility. It also can be centered in the gut. Deepak Chopra has said that trust your gut because it hasn't risen or evolved to the point of denial, that your gut is right. And I think this is where people are most sensitive when they're first starting out. There's also just knowing. There's no visual, there's no auditory, there's no sensory input. It's just aha. You just know. And so there's some type of instant recognition that is going on at that time where there's understanding and there's knowledge.
I'd also add, I have a number of friends who have this experience that they call body knowledge. And it's essentially very similar to goosebumps in their body. Something said in a lecture or something occurs. I can see a couple of my friends who identify this way will turn to me and say, oh yeah, that's true, I can feel it, body knowledge. And it's like goosebumps on your skin.
For me, I've experienced all of these sensations, but mostly energetic sensations. That's the most predominant. And this can be unnerving for some people. It's like there's an energy current that is going through the body. And I've experienced this as being healing, that it's something that is working to cleanse me, heal me. It's moving through. For me, most of the time it's been very pleasurable. Sometimes there might be a spot where I can feel a little bit of resistance and I have to let it go, and then the energy moves on. So that was very common for me. I also tend to come to full consciousness. The energy will generally come at night when I'm sleeping, and when it starts, I wake up. Sometimes my body's still asleep, but sometimes the body also wakes up, and I welcome it when it comes. It feels like a vibration, can be pleasant, blissful, cleansing. Sometimes it comes with ringing in the ears. That's what wakes me up. Gut feelings are also common. Knowing without input or just having instant comprehension happens where I don't know what I know, how I know, but I just know. That also has occurred. And I also have psychic smells. That's not so blissful. Usually smells like ash. That's another way of sensing.
Touch and feel are an important thing to me. I think it's probably my strongest communication, that kind of feeling. I walk into a room and I have a sense about it right away. That's the first thing that's true for me. What am I sensing about the room? It's very present with me. Sometimes it doesn't even have a value to it, good or bad or anything like that. Just a sense of what the room is there and the energy field that's present there that can be created through the energy of the group, the collective energy of the group. Is this a place where I want to be? I meet someone and I have a sense of them. The skill here is about the ability to interpret this. And the tricky part is the discernment of what the feeling means. Just because I'm having a certain feeling doesn't necessarily mean anything particular about what's going on there. I may be picking up that someone else is feeling. So it's a process. If you're someone who gets a lot of these impressions, there's a discernment process that you're going to have to develop for yourself. You know, you walk into a room, some of you are definitely going to be these types of folks. You know, you walk into a room and you have that sense of something. And then see what it acts out. See if what actually happens. This is a trickiest part of this, of course, is our ego. That part of us that wants to control, wants to find a linear definition to things and make value statements or judgments on things that are right there. But I will share with you a little experience that happened to me 2 weeks ago. I went to have dinner with a friend. There were some friends in from out of town. We were going to have dinner out by the University of California in Santa Barbara, and some of you might have seen this in the news. Now, it's a very active, beautiful campus there, and my friends are part of the faculty at the university, and so I'm there a lot, and the students are always doing various kinds of things and walking around up and down and doing what college students do. So there was going to be this celebration, Deltopia. So I went out, or late afternoons, going to visit the friends, at the beach a little bit, da-da-da. I drove in, and I immediately knew this was different than a million other celebrations I've been to the university with. A million's a bit of exaggeration, but I've been going to the university for 30, 40 years at this point. I just drove around the corner, getting on towards the campus. I went, this is not right. This does not feel good. So I parked at my friend's, and I got out of the car, and I said to Ken, something not good's going to happen here tonight. I don't know what. Anyway, we had dinner, and while we were having dinner, right out in front, there was this melee. And it seemed that was it, some isolated incident, but I still felt really badly. And pretty soon after we finished dinner, as soon as it was polite enough, I said, listen, I'm going to leave. And as I was driving out, I passed so many police cars, ambulances, things just rushing in to IV as I was leaving in, and you may have seen it in the news. There were huge riots there that night. 100 people were arrested, 20 or 30 people were hurt in some way. And it's a very vivid example of, I've been to a lot of these big events, so I was really surprised that I was having this feeling, because there are always minor things that happen. This was really dramatic, and I just knew it right away.
So important to trust that inner knowing. Be with it and trust it. In the ways of seeing, hearing, and feeling, a couple of points we want to make. First of all, experiences like these ebb and flow over years and decades. There's times when there seem to be a lot of experiences going on, a lot of these more pronounced communications, and there are other times when things tend to be more subtle. They basically stick to the task at hand, whatever that might be, and there are other times when there seem to be a lot more activity in regards to experiences. Experiences can become more subtle and less dramatic with time and awareness, and this is because you don't need the 2x4 over the head anymore. You're open, you're listening, you're paying attention, and so subtlety works fine. The experiences you may or may not be having are not indicative that you're any more or less spiritual. In other words, if you have a full-blown visual experience where you're watching something form in midair, or you're hearing something very clearly, it's an external voice that you're hearing, that doesn't mean that that experience is more powerful or that you are more spiritual than someone who sees in a dream or hears the thought voice. It doesn't translate like that. And it also doesn't mean that that experience is more meaningful. I did have that one experience where I still don't know the meaning of it to this day. And these are things to keep in mind when you are having experiences, that they do ebb and flow. They do become more subtle. And they may or may not have meaning, and it doesn't necessarily relate to how spiritual you are.
I just wanted to say that I think we're pulling us back into talking about the larger process we're in. Tonight we've just tried to give you kind of a sense of what our experience has been with being able to use our various senses to receive information to make that connection with the co-creative partner. Mary and I have both have a lot of decades into this at this point, so a lot of stories about it that we hope are useful. And as Mary said in her last comment, 90% of the time it's very subtle. There's this more subtle process, a gentle message, try this, do that, that kind of thing, or just a sense you have like, okay, I think I'm going to go do that, or I'm going to look for that wallet underneath the chair, that kind of thing. And it's all part of the same thing. It's all part of it. It's all part of your co-creative relationship with your higher power at many dimensions. And so in this process, we're talking particularly around the sacred contract and how you're going to use it. And you're going to be using this in all kinds of aspects of your life in different ways. Just wanted to kind of make the range of experience from the most subtle to really dramatic things that happen, but it doesn't matter the size or the scope or where it is, are really about this connection that we have with a higher power that's there all the time that we can use. And these experiences, large and small, really encourage us to build that relationship in all different aspects of our life.
The next video in this series is Co-Creative Communication. What follows is a listing of what will be presented in that video.
Then next week, we will go more deeply into the co-creative partnership and the process of communication, how that can occur, and what constitutes good and also clear communication. We'll also present the final element that you need for manifestation through attraction and what impending manifestation might feel like and look like to you. It can be a little like transition labor as the energy rises and becomes intense in some situations. In that situation, you need to stay focused and on track and know when to act, know what action to take, and when to wait patiently.
I'm excited about this process. I think this is the one that has so much transference into every aspect of our life when we learn to practice co-creation.
Just a reminder that we're available for coaching. Coaching can be around knowing what you want, can be around your contract content, specific activation times, also assistance in working with your co-creative partner after the contract is activated, and also troubleshooting the manifestation process. We'll talk a little bit about that next week also.
I've really enjoyed this class. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you all for being here.
It is a lot of fun, and we really want to support you in this process. I'm going to put up the contact information for Lucky and I. We thank you all for coming, and we'll talk with you next week. Thank you.
The information in this course is based on the book Heart Journey, written by Mary Shea under the spiritual pen name Mary Juno. The book is divided into 3 parts. Part 1, the initiation, is about writing your Sacred Heart contract. Part 2, the co-creative partnership and manifestation process, gives you communication techniques and also troubleshooting tips for the manifestation process. Part 3, Spiritual Development and Heart Openings, lists 12 co-creative thought transformations that will increase your ability to attract, and 8 stages of heart openness. The more your heart is open, the greater your ability to receive abundance. The book is available at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and your local bookstore. Also available in digital format everywhere for the iPad, tablet, iPhone, Android phone, Kindle, Nook, and computer. There are free apps available for all formats.